This video is brought to you by my Discord and my Blue Sky. Check the links down in the description below. Hey, what's going on, you guys, and welcome back to That's a Wrap. My name is the Raptor, and today we will be reviewing the 2025 Death Battle finale, Ash Williams from Evil Dead versus Moto from Madagascar Escape to Africa. But before we get started, let's introduce who we have on the panel today. First up, we have one of our lovely event managers, also one of the most frequently returning guests on this series, somehow, Metal Potato. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. Also, this is the wrong matchup. What the fuck is going on? I was told we were doing something else.
No, we're not. Screw you. No, I'm really excited to talk about Ash versus Yugi, but moving on, we have Soul, another one of our lovely event managers. How are you doing, Soul?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Question though, I loved Evil Dead. I thought this was the matchup. What are you talking about? I came here for Ash versus Moto.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're not gonna see Chainsaw versus Hippo today.
Well, I don't know how I will help this episode, but you know, I'm happy to be here. I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
I appreciate filling the slot anyway. Yes, thank you. And last but not least, we have a very special guest, one of my oldest friends that I've known since I was like 6 years old. If you've seen any of my really old videos, you may remember him as SpiderSonic01, but today you can just call him Eric. How are you doing, Eric?
Hi. Wait, I thought this link was for free Master Duel gems.
No, it's not. I'm sorry. Wow, everyone just got the wrong memo today. Damn, this is gonna be rough. No, I'm kidding. Yes, thank you guys so much for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it. Yes, today we are in fact going to be talking about Ash Ketchum from Pokemon versus Yugi Muto from Yu-Gi-Oh! The Death Battle that came out, the really, really long-awaited Death Battle. Because at this point, like, the stuff that we've known on the Kickstarter that hasn't happened yet, we've known about it for over a year. And, you know, Ash versus Yugi is one of the biggest matchups from a legacy perspective already. So, you know, needless to say, the hype was really high for it. But before we start, let's talk about our attachment to this matchup. Like, you know, were we excited for it and all that?
I want to say, I'm going to be honest, I don't even know.
You don't know?
I guess it was like a mixed feeling for me.
Okay.
Earlier years and earlier seasons of Death Battle, oh yeah, I definitely was in support of this matchup. But I mean, as I grew into the community and all that, yada, life of my story. I don't know. It was like kind of a mixed feeling with this matchup.
What was holding it back for you?
Why this long?
Oh, really? So you're like, it hasn't happened now, so like, what's the point?
I don't know, man. I don't know how to explain it. Just outside of that, but when it did happen, you know, like, I gave it a watch. You know, obviously, I'm gonna turn off my brain. I'm ready to go.
Okay, well, I would hope you would have watched it in preparation for this, so I appreciate that a lot. Yes, very good. Okay, I understand. Yeah, not everyone's gonna be like over the moon with this matchup, but I am a little sorry that like it kind of, you know, declined for you a little bit, but hope you enjoyed it anyway. We'll get to that in just a second. Soul, how about you? Were you excited for this one?
Excited would be an understatement. I have been waiting for this episode for years, like almost like, I don't know how long. I want to say like 8 years since I've learned about this episode, like, or maybe even longer. I don't know. Like, I've gotten into Death Battle. My first ever episode was the Pokemon Battle Royale.
Okay.
Back then, I just started getting into Pokemon and like was watching the anime as well. And then I guess shortly after, I've heard that like, yeah, you know, it would be cool if Ash Ketchum would be in a Death Battle. Like, how would that go? And then, you know, kind of learn about Yugi as well. I wasn't really attached to Yugi as much, but I did have that appreciation of, like, you know, the memes and everything.
Right, of course.
And like the whole overall culture of it. And I've also been preparing for it. So yeah, I was super excited for this when it got announced in the Kickstarter, and I'm super excited to talk about this.
Yeah,
episode
of course.
As well.
Yeah, because as far as Ash in the context of Death Battle, like, yeah, there might be other matchups you can make for him. I know that Lucy Heartfilia from Fairy Tail was one that was, you know, floating around for a little bit, but like, if you're talking about like, you know, trying to answer the biggest versus questions, it's only Ash versus Yugi. Like, that's the only one that really, you know, transcends versus, as some people would say. Like, this is the childhood debate that a lot of people have, you know, so So it doesn't surprise me that like this is the one that most people were excited for, and this is the one that ended up happening. And Eric, how about you? Were you excited? I know you're kind of a little bit on the opposite side of the spectrum from Soul.
Yes, so this was my most wanted matchup for like a really long time now. See, as you said, I'm basically the opposite, where I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm a big fan of Yugi, and I wanted him on the show. Of course, I knew Ash from Pokemon, and that was I was like, you know, into that as a kid, but not like to a severe degree. But you know, I really wanted Yugi on the show, and I felt like his best matchup was Ash versus Yugi. So yeah, I was like over the moon when this matchup finally got announced.
For us, it's kind of been like a running joke that your favorite characters get on Deathbattle, but they almost always lose. So I know that this was like your Hail Mary for like one of your favorite characters winning, aside from Spider-Man.
Yeah, this was like my last attempt, bro. Episode before this, Dante like came back then lost.
Yeah.
So my favorite characters are dropping like flies, man.
Yeah, no, I remember even like back in like season like 9 and 10, like that was still the thing that we were saying. So, you know, obviously we know who won now, and we'll get to talk about that as well. But like either way, I'm really happy that your favorite matchup actually came to fruition like this. I'm really pleased about that. And as far as my first impressions, I think a lot of people already know this, that like, you know, I know that this matchup is not perfect. Like, you know, it might have some flaws about like how to actually like make it work, so to speak. Like there's always going to be some interpretational stuff. Some people may have issues with that, but you know, I always expected it to happen. I knew its potential as an episode could go absolutely crazy, especially these days. Like what Deathbattle is able to accomplish these days, like holy hell, like it could really go insane. And these were not my childhood like game style TV shows. Like for me it was Bakugan and Chaotic. I know that Chaotic isn't really the same as those other ones exactly, but like that was the actual game that I played the most. I played that much more than Bakugan. And now I gotta find some matchups for Maxor and Kaor and some of those other characters. But again, I recognized how big this matchup was. It's too huge to ignore, too huge to phone it in. And like I said earlier, like it literally transcends versus. Like if you're doing the biggest versus debates, I feel like this is one that kind of just has to happen, right? So, you know, it was really cool to actually see it happen now.
Yeah, it's the biggest debate of the playground, Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh!
Did anyone actually like play Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Like with other people?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. It got banned in my school.
Really?
Because so many... Okay, there was a thing where whenever you lose, you have to hand over your Pokemon card to the winner.
Oh. I don't.
So Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules.
I was about to say I don't know if that's universal. I don't know if I remember that happening.
I feel like a lot of schools had to ban like a lot of these trading card games where people would like take cards from each other and steal it, and you know, kids would get mad and all that kind of stuff would happen.
And nowadays people are just banning 6, 7.
Shut the fuck up.
I did own some Pokemon cards when I was a kid, but I never really got the chance to play with anyone. I didn't really understand the rules of the card game at all.
To be fair, I think a lot of people didn't.
No, it was basically bullshit made up as you go.
Yeah, but I did play. I mentioned Master Duel at the beginning of this. I do play Master Duel from time to time, and I enjoy that.
Very nice. Cool. Yeah, I got some Pokemon cards as a kid. I distinctly remember that my first like actual Pokemon monster card I ever got was Lickitung. So he holds a very special place in my heart as far as Pokemon go. Okay, but now moving into the actual episode, we can talk about the animation itself. So, Soul, we'll start with you for this one. What did you think about the animation? Its quality, its everything. What'd you think?
Well, okay, so before the episode was aired, and I mean, I think a lot of this also thought this way, in the community, that I did not expect this episode to actually be in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, with how big this episode is and like with how much stuff there was going on, I was for sure expecting it to be like either 2D and like mostly sprite animation, because you know we haven't had like a sprite episode since I think Ghost Rider versus Spawn.
Ghost Rider versus Spawn and Joker versus Giorno are the only 2 sprite fights we've had since Deathbattle came back. Yeah.
I thought that like, okay, for sure that this is what they have been doing. The sprite team, as we call them, that they must be cooking this up. But no, apparently like no, the traditional sprite team, quote unquote, actually wanted to do this in 3D, and this was experimental and very ambitious. So I did not know what to expect upon like watching it, and I can see like, yeah, it was amazing. They definitely knocked it out of the park and definitely excelled at like with the animation. I do have a few problems here and there with like how it's presented and stuff. Like I can talk about that a little later, but they did very well. It was very pretty.
Nice.
And like, yeah, it was a dream come true.
And going back to the animation styles for a second, yeah, I know that Ben did say something about how like there's not really like a sprite team, so to speak, and like it's really just the animators are like the animators that feel comfortable doing different styles, you know, they'll just be the ones working on various animations. So like, you know, saying the sprite team, so to speak, isn't really fair to say anymore. One thing that I find really interesting though is that starting from Spider-Man versus Deku, all of the animations up to this point have been 3D. Because literally the only one that hasn't been an animation was Blade versus Buffy. All other episodes since then have been 3D back to back to back to back. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's
I have not noticed that.
Yeah, it's really weird for them that like usually they intentionally like to switch it up a little more. And I appreciate that like they're trying to do the styles that they want to do and what they feel is best for the matchup. It's just usually they intentionally like try to space things out so like, you know, there's a bit of a rotation. But no, like literally all animations since Spider-Man versus Deku, it's just been 3D. Granted, different like styles of 3D, you could say, but still 3D.
I felt like, oh, well, you can't really do Ash versus Yugi in 3D because there's probably not models for all these Pokemon, particularly the Yu-Gi-Oh monsters.
Right.
Don't have all 3D models for them. But like then it came out and I was like really surprised. Like just it looks like beautiful, man. like everything, it looks so good. The animation they did for like Yugi summoning Slifer, that was like incredible.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. There were some parts of this animation, like the Gengar sequence, the Slifer sequence, and like basically everything that has to do with the Dark Magicians and Pikachu. Like so many shots, like look so polished, so clean, very great to see.
I love it, but I really thought it was gonna be like kind of like a mix, like of sprite 3D. I thought it was gonna be like that.
You thought it was gonna be like alternating style, like kind of like Saitama versus Popeye?
Pretty, yeah.
All right,
I think it
interesting.
could have worked. It could have worked that way, but nah. Outside of that, I really did love it, and I like the style of each of the Pokemons we were given.
There technically was a mixture of sprite and 3D animation, because the very beginning of the fight was that like old school Game Boy like sprites.
Yeah, you
then
could.
They transitioned to 3D.
A little bit, yeah. You have stuff in there. You have some varying things. It was really cool to see like the Pokemon reference at the beginning and then the Yu-Gi-Oh reference at the end. Like, you know, very similar to Spider-Man versus Deku. Although at this point, I'm now thinking that if an animation starts with a reference to a character like that, it means they're gonna lose because it means that the winning character's reference is gonna be at the end. Because that's now happened a couple times. The character models, like Eric said, like I think so many of them looked so solid. Obviously there was easy escalation. Like this is one of the easiest matchups you can have escalation for. Just, you know, keep getting like stronger attacks, stronger characters, and of course, you know, bring it back to the beginning, you know, starting and ending with Pikachu and the Dark Magicians. Like that's all really cool. I have seen some complaints against the animation, like some people saying that the fight isn't like really reactive. Like a lot of things like don't kind of react in the fight. Like I don't know if I would go that far, but like I kind of understand what they're saying, that there are some attacks that kind of don't really feel like impactful or important to overall what's happening. Like I think sometimes the choreography isn't always the best. Sometimes it's good, sometimes maybe not as much.
A lot of the times like the characters do feel quite a bit floaty. Like it feels like they're not really like reacting. It's like, yeah, they're not really reacting as much compared to like the environment as well. And like this floatiness can also be like shown in a few instances where they appear to be like not really touching the ground at times, where it feels like they're not really like either they're like floating above the ground or they're not really running across as they would be. And like they kind of like also react not as well. Like animation is a little too floaty, not that when it should be like more sharp at times. Like that was noticeable a few times. And the second big complaint was the sound design. I think people complained about the impact of stuff not being there, and I think that kind of stems from like the sound design in a few instances. And I did notice that a few times where like some impacts, some sounds just felt a little bit muffled or didn't sound right.
Some of them don't really feel like they have that boom that like a big impact should have. As an audio student, that's definitely something I can say that I noticed a little bit that, like, I definitely didn't find the sound design stellar like I found it in some previous episodes, but I do definitely think that, yeah, the whole thing where it's like, again, some people are saying that a lot of stuff doesn't feel reactive. Yeah, that can definitely be a part of that. And the floatiness of it was something I forgot to mention, but I definitely wanted to bring that up too, that yes, sometimes the movement of the characters can feel a little strange paired with the impacts of it. I think flimsy is too strong of a word, but I think, yeah, we just kind of need a little more impact in basically everything, I think. And I thought the ending, you know, made enough sense. You know, it was a very bittersweet feeling ending, but I think it was appropriate for the tone of the fight and the characters. Like, all of the Pokemon are basically like smiling even as they're petrified, which I think is a really nice touch. Like, you know, the friendship is still there, you know, even to the end. So that's really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad the death wasn't very brutal. You know, it would be totally inappropriate. I think it's also probably one of the bigger reasons people aren't like massively salty over the ending, because it's like Ash dies in this way he canonically dies in the first Pokemon movie.
And I have been one to say that I think that sometimes people get a little too caught up about, like, the ending can't be that brutal, and it's like, it's still a death battle, guys. Like, you have to expect that some characters may die, and it may be like a very intentional death, like that's in your face. But for this one, I can understand that, you know, like, it just would not work tonally whatsoever if it was any sort of brutal thing. Like, I think back to Pokemon versus Digimon, where it's like, yeah, that's a bit much for who the characters are and for, you know, the fans of the people clicking on it, you know. Like, this is an instance where I can definitely sympathize with people who say that, so I am happy that they did what they felt was most appropriate, and I think it worked really well.
What people speculated was that Yugi was gonna trap him in, like, his dimension. I don't remember what it was called.
Like
that's
The Shadow Realm, the Shadow
Realm.
Yeah, that's what people thought was gonna happen. Like, that's what's gonna happen to Ash. It wasn't gonna be brutal. He was gonna be trapped in the Shadowverse or the Shadow Realm.
If I had one critique over the animation, it's that I thought the voice acting was really great, but I just wish at certain points, like, there's a section of the fight in the middle where the characters like stop talking and it's just the montage of them fighting, and I wish there was more dialogue there. Like, I wish Yugi says, "I summon Slifer the Sky Dragon, use Thunder Force attack," or you know, Ash says, "Go Lucario Mega Evolution," like that type of thing.
I have a feeling they were probably trying to keep pacing in mind for that, because a lot of the time when they do talk, they put the focus on the character. And I think, yes, like, there could have been more moments where it's like they didn't feel the need to, like, cut back to Ash every time he talked, or cut back to Yugi every time he talked, and we can just hear, like, the voice line in the background while Lucario goes into Mega Evolution. So I think the reason probably why they did that was to keep pacing in mind, but I think they could have easily worked it in, you know, without having to cut back to Ash or Yugi every time they said something. And some characters kind of just pop up just to be there. Like, they kind of just stand around, they don't really do anything. And I know that there are some people that are like, oh, I really want to see this one character in the animation, but I don't really know if that's what they mean when they're like, oh, just to have them, like, pop up and not really do anything. Like, I don't know. Like, there's the one shot where it's like you have the Time Wizard, and I know Oshawott there. I love Oshawott. He was my first starter Pokemon in the first game that I played, Pokemon Black. So, like, there are some people there, but, like, they literally just show up to be there, right? Like, I don't know if everyone loves that, like, that's what they're there for, you know, just to kind of be there but not really do anything. You know what I mean?
Obviously, I love to see every popular monster do something cool or have a big moment, but that's just not realistic. Because the Ash and Yugi have just too many monsters, man. So I rather them have just either small cameos if they can't, like, realistically have them all do, like, crazy stuff, you know?
So you think even just giving them a cameo, like, for, like, literally half a second or whatever, you think that's still better than not putting them in at all?
Yes, I think it's better than nothing.
Okay, I can understand that. I can imagine, like, if someone was really, like, hoping for, like I want to see Time Wizard show up, you know, like, when they think I want to see Time Wizard show up, they're probably not thinking I want to see him just stand there. You know what I mean? Like, they're probably thinking, I want to see him do cool stuff. So, yes, I understand that, you know, it might be better than nothing for some people, but if some people have expectations for, like, what they're hoping to see from specific characters, that might not really cut it for them. But I understand what you're saying for sure.
This episode gets like compared a lot to Bowser versus Eggman because, well, yeah, it's like the next army versus army fight. And I think compared to this one, where in that one, in Bowser versus Eggman, like it kind of focused more on like the actual character interactions rather than like power sets and or who showed up. Like I think less people overall showed up or had like a big moment in there. I found the fight choreography in terms of like the fight progression, it did make sense, though this is one of the instances where this being in 3D and the lack of like proper models, especially for like on the Yu-Gi-Oh side, might have caused problems there in terms of like what monsters they chose. Because like, I mean, Celtic Guardian gets beat up like 3 times in this fight. Like in the first one, like literally, like it's what I noticed that like, okay, Celtic Guardian's in the beginning fighting Lucario, getting beat up by Lucario. Then next Incineroar does like a seismic toss on him. And then, like, okay, somehow he's not dead there. And then finally, Gigantamax Gengar finally gets rid of Celtic Guardian. Like, how is he still alive?
This is part of my problem. This is part of my point where it's like, we see those characters used so much, but then we have other characters that literally do nothing in the animation. And I understand that, yes, maybe there was a problem with the models. I understand that. But that kind of feeds into my problem where it's like, clearly there was space to make room for more characters more akin to Bowser versus Eggman, where sometimes we go from character to character and we see, you know, we get a good look at everybody, and here we just don't get a good look at everybody, and I think there was definitely enough room to do it. I do see that as a bit of a negative, that we just don't see as much as I think we easily could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And to be clear to everyone listening, amazing. Like, the floatiness of all of it, like, that doesn't apply, like, to the whole animation. It's just some shots or some movement kind of feels like that. There are some shots that look absolutely incredible. You know, even though there might be some holes that we can poke in some of the production of the animation, I think it's safe to say that the sum of its parts still turn out to be something very, very fun, incredibly impressive. Still so many great aspects of this animation, even if there are some things where it's like, well, this shot looked a little weird, or this could have been done a little differently. Like, the sum of everything is still really, really good.
Yeah, I absolutely love the animation. I know, like, pretty much for any Death Battle animation, you can say, oh, this could be better. Oh, I wish they had done this instead. But overall, I loved it, man. I love the intro. I love the all the little Easter eggs they put in there. Like, you can see, like, Yugi and Ash's friends in the stadium background are watching the fight.
Yeah.
And I personally, you know, you said that you wish some of these monsters had bigger moments. I kind of agree with that, but I'm also just happy to see, a part of the fun for me is just seeing the monsters on screen at all. Just to see how, like, oh, they remembered about this monster or that monster, and so to me, that's just, like, really cool.
And I'm sure, Eric, there are some people who very much think the same way, that it's like, you know, just seeing this character at all in a Death Battle animation, that is so cool. And to the people who did really appreciate all of that, I'm really happy that's what you got, because they did manage to fit in a decent amount of stuff in there.
One last thing with the track, they got Jason Page, the original singer for the Pokemon intro. The fact that they somehow, Brandon and they were able to get him for the track was just amazing. When I heard the announcement that, like, yeah, he's gonna be on here, I was like, how did they even get this man to be here? It's like legendary status, probably like one of the best guest singers to be there.
I've listened to the track a few times, and yeah, for sure, Brandon, Therwolf, Jason, like, everyone did a really great job with it. Okay, so with all of that said, let's move on to the analyses, how these characters were analyzed, the writing, the editing, all of that stuff. Eric, we'll start with you for this one. What did you think about all of that?
So this is the longest, I'm sure, none of the longest, the second longest episode of Death Battle, right?
I think so.
Yeah, behind Goku versus Superman.
Yeah, Goku versus Superman is the first, but this one is like literally half an hour long, and it might be the only one that's that long, yeah.
And most of that has to do with, like, how these are pretty long analysis. And honestly, it's been personally some of my favorite analysis on the show, because I feel like it's one of those things where you tell they got pretty in touch with the fan base they're trying to represent.
Yep.
And I think it really pays off. On Ash's side, the whole thing, like, just give Ash a win, man. Just give Ash a win. And even complaining about how Ash lost to Alan in the XYZ anime, I think it is. Because I remember back in the day when that aired, how people were really mad about that. And then on Yugi's side, like references like the 2000 deck incident, which is like a thing that happened. Guys showed up to a tournament with a deck of 2,000 cards. And that's the reason we have a size limit on decks now these days. I feel like Deathbattle's analysis have really improved over the years. Like they've gone to just not like doing feats and just making jokes, but trying to do a little bit more like a narrative analysis and like a thematic analysis. And I really enjoy that. Also, the editing is very good as usual. So yeah, I really like the analysis for this episode.
I think the analysis was pretty good on both sides. I like how they like cover what is gonna be included. I think that was the biggest thing that came to everyone's mind. Like what was each gonna get, what was gonna be not included, what counts as canon. Like is the game and the show's gonna still be canon to a degree or not?
That's definitely something I was really concerned about especially when I was putting my prediction together. I was like, well, hang on, like what exactly is happening here? How is this set up? What's being included? What are the rules of the game, so to speak? And yes, thankfully, like during the analyses, but also right before the battle, they made sure to clarify all of that really well. And I respect those decisions as well. I think, some people could argue that, well, there are other ways you can look at it, but like, I think this was perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable way to do it.
I used to watch the anime at least up to Pokemon XY or Gen 5, is it?
Gen 6. Gen 6.
Gen 6. Because afterwards, when it came to Looney, I had no clue what came in store for the Alola region and what Ash got there.
Okay.
And also, I never once seen the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. I've only seen clips, and especially that one clip of "It should have been me."
Well, I mean,
it's not fair.
Who hasn't seen that? Like literally
It's
everyone
not
has seen
fair.
that.
I genuinely think that like these are like among like the best analyses of like the entire show. That comes from like I'm just very impressed with how much information they were able to cram in such even though these are very long analyses, like 9 minutes long or something like that. It was still impressive because that even 9 minutes could not cover that much amount of information that both of these characters have.
Yeah.
So I was for one, I was already impressed because with the structure of how they made their analysis progress, like they covered like each of their stories really well. They didn't like just focus on just the monsters or just on the cards. They actually named them in a way that actually made sense in in terms of like progression of how their stories and journeys are.
Yep.
Which it was really impressive. I tend to prefer analyses over the fights in general. If an analysis is more memorable to me, then I will like the episode in general a lot more. And
honestly, with all the people who seem to think the exact opposite, I really respect that.
Yeah, like there were like a bunch of references. Like I grew up watching the Pokemon anime a lot, like especially like more of the early generations. They mentioned quite a few things outside of just these two characters. Like they mentioned how Sceptile beat Darkrai, and they called Darkrai a Smeargle victim, which I don't know if you guys don't know. Like in competitive Pokemon, Darkrai had this insane move called like Dark Void, which basically makes Pokemon go to sleep. And it was really good in competitive, but a problem is that Smeargle can learn every move in competitive Pokemon, and so Smeargle was able to use that move. And because Smeargle was so broken with that move that Pokemon decided, you know what, instead of just banning Smeargle with that move, we're just gonna nerf the move entirely, and that made Darkrai entirely useless in competitive afterwards. So there were a few other ones, like Pot of Greed mentioned with how they phrased it.
Yeah,
like Pot of Greed, and then I'll draw Pot of Greed.
Yeah, as far as my opinions, like there's definitely a lot of stuff that I can piggyback off of. Like I thought like a lot of important or just cool information was covered. Like again, whether it was actually important to the debate, I like how they sometimes took the time to just talk about something that they felt was cool or worth mentioning. And like Soul said, it wasn't just about the players or the monsters, but it was also about like the games in general and the shows in general. Like lots of cool information about that. And there are some episodes where I think, oh my god, like this would be such a great introduction to people who don't know anything about these characters. I don't know if I can say the same about this one because there's so much stuff that like you kind of need to be an aficionado to get the most out of it, but I think it goes onto the other side of the spectrum, which is also good, which is that the fans of the series get the most out of this episode. Like you are rewarded for knowing a lot about Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! You are rewarded for being such a longtime fan. I think that's a great thing. You know, I think this definitely serves to be one of those episodes. I think that's really cool. And yeah, the humor and editing are pretty average for Deathbattle, as in the humor is kind of whatever and the editing is really, really good. I especially like the Pokedex editing that they did, like where they had like the Pokedex like show, you know, a little text thing. Like I thought that was a really nice touch for Ash's analysis. It's clear that they're just as passionate about the analyses, if not even more so than they were in the animation. And anything I can criticize the analyses for, there's like a really big asterisk next to it. Like there are some times where I think, oh my god, this is such an overload of information. But then there are other times where I'm thinking like, well, it would have been cool if they brought up this thing as well. And those are kind of opposites. Like you can't really have it both ways. So I think what I kind of have to accept is that they did the best that they could. Like they tried to focus on the things that they thought was most important. And I think overall they did a really good job with it. There are some things you might think, well, like based on the debate, like they really should have talked about this, but like I think they did fine. I think they did a really good job. I don't want to say streamlining it because again, the analyses are really long, but like just focusing on what they thought was most important and writing a well-paced script about that. I think they did a good job.
I really appreciate how they didn't just cover the dual monsters area. They covered the stuff that came before that, the season 0 stuff.
Oh yeah,
because that's that's what happens in the the original manga. Both Pokemon, the Pokemon anime and the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, they kind of have a reputation of just being, this is an anime to shill a product, right? This is just a one big walking advertisement. And to some extent that's true, but like before Yu-Gi-Oh was, this major card game, it was just a story that Kazuki Takahashi wanted to tell in Shonen Jump magazine. Mm-hmm. So having them like really appreciate the story, because I personally think the story of Yu-Gi-Oh is really great. And I also think the Pokemon anime has like, it can be really great at times too, especially in some of the movies. I think like the first Pokemon movies are like amazing. So yeah, I appreciate them not just doing all the memes and all the like the 4Kids jokes and the Yu-Gi-Oh bridge stuff, and like focusing on like to show that these are like legitimate characters and not just ads for stuff,
even though they did still do plenty of that, but yes, they made sure to make room for everything. Like the fact that they were able to fit in so much information while also emphasizing their journeys and their general achievements, whether or not that actually directly relates to feats or whatnot. Like the fact they were able to fit all of that in, I think is very admirable. It really shows how far they've come with their writing, because so much of that stuff could have just been shoved into like black boxes. We've seen this before, like the corner boxes, like some stuff where it's like, oh, it might have been cool if you said that out loud, but I'm so happy that they didn't choose to do that, and they made sure to make a big point by actually saying all of this stuff out loud, because again, it is really important to the characters, and it really nails home the idea that you are rewarded for having stuck with these characters so much, because now you get to hear Deathbattle talk about it, to the fullest extent. And like Eric said, like these are 2 of the longest analyses we've ever had, if not literally like the 2 longest we've had, just as far as analyses go. And I think that's exactly the way it should have been, because that's what you need for these characters.
One thing I also appreciate is like not also like just covering the monsters, but also like mainly like the bonds between like the main primary bonds, which you like Ash and Pikachu and Yugi and Yami. Like I appreciate them actually going through and like actually like explaining their relationship, and in general like how their bonds with like the rest of the Pokemon and the heart of the cards work. Before I learned more about Yugi, I was so confused about how there were like 2 different designs for Yugi, because I didn't know anything about Yami. I was like, hold up. Like when I was like trying to look at Yugi, and was like, why does he look like isn't he supposed to be like a young
It's a time skip.
Child,
that's what it is. It's just like, a time skip, right?
It's just a time skip. It's just a time skip. Why is he so young, and why does he look like an adult? Like, I appreciate them like going through like even like the bonds between the Pokemon. Like especially like in terms of like progression, like they could have just name dropped Ash's Charizard as like, oh yeah, he's one of Ash's best monsters and he's cool. But no, instead of like they actually went through and like said that like he wasn't on board with that, and that actually cost him a Pokemon League in the very beginning. And like that was they treated it as a stepping stone in his journey.
All right, great. And with all that said, we can move on to the outcome. I can't imagine we'll have much to say on this, but I mean, we might as well. Metal, we'll start with you. Do you agree with the outcome? Do you think it was explained well? What do you think?
I'm gonna make this quick and simple, and I full on agree with their outcome. I think they did a phenomenal job, like giving their reasoning why Yugi won with his let's be honest, his bullshit hacks. Not to discredit Ash. I think it is fairly reasonable that they gave him experience. I think that was a clear, obvious overall advantage he had. I think like what made it obvious was soon as like I didn't know where they were at before. I assumed they were close to similar. But when they mentioned that goddess, I'm like, okay.
What was that, multiversal?
Well, it literally like an attack that created the multiverse, essentially. Yeah, so that's pretty all encompassing.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's no Pokemon that can rival that.
I mean, there's always going to be different interpretations regarding the cosmology. It's very clear that there was even a black box, and I think I was going to say that the conclusion, I think, also used the black box as well, in that they put the really complicated stuff in the black box whenever they feel it's necessary, because there's so much to talk about. Like it's crazy. But they actually talked about the various cosmologies in one of the black boxes, and they do believe that Yu-Gi-Oh's generally scales higher. And whether or not you agree with that, I do think it is nice to see that Deathbattle doesn't always just equate everything to each other, because that's a complaint that I saw some people having, where it's like, well, they kind of ignore cosmology and they're just saying like it's all the same. But I'm really happy that like they actually, stuck to what they believed in, and if they believe that Yu-Gi-Oh's cosmology is higher, then they actually say it, so I appreciated that for sure.
Obviously, when they brought up the little fact that, oh, well, couldn't Ash just, straight up throw hands against Yugi? I'm like, after seeing the shenanigans and the analysis of both, seeing that they pretty much have done similar things outside of with their monsters and Pokemons. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that like even if Ash threw hands, I think it like wouldn't really matter in that regard.
I mean,
Plus, he's not really
realistically, it's hard to argue that he would even get the opportunity to do something like that, but yeah, it's like, even though Ash, I think it's fair to say that Ash is physically stronger than Yugi, Yugi and Yami, like, themselves kind of have too many defenses anyway, for Ash to be able to take advantage of that. Like, it's just, technically you could say, like, it's possible, but, like, the chances of it actually succeeding are so low.
Mm-hmm. Also, I don't think Ash is the one to really throw hands, so there's that.
Well, I mean, he tried to attack a Mewtwo. If that's not throwing hands, I don't know what is.
I don't know, man. Like, I mean, from that one instance, I don't recall any other times he would try to.
They showed a few times of him being physical and stuff, but like when it comes to like defending his Pokemon and like trying to go for them, I mean, Ash literally jumps off of like Lumio's tower, like the equivalent of the Eiffel Tower when Pikachu was falling. Ash literally jumped and like was going to risk his own death to like go and to like save him, and like only was saved by another Pokemon. So I mean, yeah, Ash is really carry. If his Pokemon are in trouble, then he's gonna throw hands.
Yeah, okay, then that's just my poor memory, because I don't remember.
I do get what you're saying, that like if you look at the sum total of all the battles that Ash has been in, like are we really trying to say that Ash has tried to throw hands in more battles than fewer battles? Like I understand what you're saying, that like there's a lot of instances where he's not doing that. I think a lot of people like to bring it up though, because we have seen him try to do it, and we know he's physically ridiculous, so we have to entertain the idea regardless. But I understand what you're saying though.
Yeah.
In general, yeah, I mean, going into this, most people knew like inherently that like, yeah, Yugi was gonna win. Yugi just has like a bunch of it's all about those spells and trap cards that he loves to use. Like Ash doesn't use even the equivalent of like status effects or conditions to like manipulate the battle, where he's just way more like offensive, while Yugi is way more of a strategist. So it makes sense. As soon as we heard of the goddess of light, it's like, and then I hear the word multiverse, and it's like, oh no, because it's like Soul Galea only gets up to universe, and then we have a multiversal being, and like
again, there's always going to be different interpretation. Like some people might be like, well, based on such and such, like it should actually be much higher. But the fact that Deathbattle didn't really say that, or like the biggest thing you could pull on regarding what they actually said was controlling the concept of time. Like that's really like the most copium you could work off of. But other than that, they really didn't say anything that could be like, oh yeah, it could match Herakti. So even if you believe a little differently, it's clear very early on that Deathbattle did not believe that.
They completely cover like all bases of like what they can do. They did cover like Ash's few advantages of like, yeah, he has a little more experience in general, and his bonds with Pokemon do allow him to like, generally I would say they would be more smarter and be able to like actually grow and adapt to like the fight situations compared to Yugi's monsters, which yeah, that does make sense in general. Ash is like limited to like all of his Pokemon, like in terms of like, yeah, he's limited to like whenever they go down or like if they get KO'd or I guess in this sense die, like yeah, he just loses that amount of that little amount of like abilities, hacks or tech, while Yugi can just like Yugi just has abilities to just resummon his monsters with Monster Reborn, can like redirect attacks, can literally like he just wins like
he just wins. He just wins. You can just end it right there.
He just wins.
No, I think that is so important though. The thing about like all the monster, like the Pokemon fainting. This was something I brought up in my prediction that I thought is like really important to think about. That like yes, Ash does have a lot of cool stuff across his Pokemon, but only like some of his Pokemon can do very specific things, and some of those things could be very important. And if those Pokemon faint or are just removed from the battle somehow, then you're kind of out of luck from there. Whereas you look at Yugi, where yes, he does have stronger and weaker cards, but Deathbattle even said it themselves that he knows how to use the weaker cards in ways that are insanely strong. So there's not really like a weak point in his deck, and a lot of the stuff that comes from like, again, like Slifer, Obelisk, Ra, Parakti, those are just so much harder to remove from the equation than a lot of Ash's Pokemon. So as much as some people may not want to admit it, I do think that is a huge part of the debate, that like as things progress, as the fight goes on, I just don't really see it benefiting Ash the longer things go on.
Yeah, and like in general, I'd say that like it's not like Ash doesn't have those win cons in general. Like I mean, we talk about like the physicality. Technically, he is more physical, though I think Yugi is more durable. He took a literal blast from Ra.
Yeah,
that's insanely powerful.
Yeah.
So they did their best to like even make it like as close as possible in the end, and like the conclusion of saying, yeah, I mean Ash could potentially do this and that and adapt to the situation, adapt to each other. But then like you kind of read the black boxes, and then also reading what like the researchers have said about like what they believe how high Yugi scales, and it's like no, this was no competition.
I would also say like I don't know if I would say that they tried to make it as close as possible. It's more like they just tried to entertain every possibility on Ash's side, and again saying why they don't believe it would work, but still entertaining it because why not? Really, the only thing I think that they didn't really entertain was potential speed. Like, I think that even if you want to argue that both Ash and Yugi should be, like, the same speed, or even if you think that, even if Ash does have a faster play style or whatever, even if you think that that would be negligible, I think that's still something to be brought up. Like, I think that's still something they could have very easily brought up very briefly. Either way, I don't think it changes very much, because I think that there's just not enough counters or resistances that Ash's side has for the overwhelming power that Yugi has, and the hacks as well. But even still, whether or not it was negligible, I think it would have been very easy to just say, like, have a very quick line where, like, just talk about the speed difference or the speed similarities just a little bit. But that's, like, the only thing where I think, like, they could have I guess also there are tons of other hacks they could have brought up for Yugi. Like, there's so much stuff they didn't even really mention in the conclusion. But again, they gotta fit in what they think is important to fit in. So really, it's just speed. Even if it was negligible, I think they could have said something very, very quick, but it doesn't really change anything.
Basically, the fight went how I thought it would go, pretty much in every factor. Like, I thought they would put them about similar speeds. I thought Yugi would have the stronger monsters, or then the traps and spells would, like, you know, just pushes things a little too far in Yugi's corner. One thing I thought before the episode came out, I thought there was going to be like a power of friendship category.
I mean, that's kind of the monster. Like, that's part of the monsters category, right?
Yeah, they do talk about it, but I was like, I kind of wanted just like the memes, just have there to be a power of friendship category, and for that to be a tie. Because they basically said Ash and Yugi have similar bonds with their Pokemon and their monsters. So that's something that's just like a little memey thing I wanted to see. But yeah, it basically went how I thought it would. Obviously, Yugi's spells and trap cards and a lot of his monster abilities are not made for versus debating. They're made for the Yu-Gi-Oh duels.
Yeah.
So trying to like analyze, interpret like certain abilities, like how does Mirror Force work in this format? Mirror Force is a trap card. When the opponent declares attack, all the enemy monsters are destroyed.
Right.
And people, I remember seeing people saying, well, maybe Ash's Pokemon could just dodge the reflection or something like that.
Yeah.
Like dodge, having the attack reflected back at them.
And there's a bunch of cards where it's like it affects all the opposing monsters or whatever. And you could say, oh, well, that obviously affects Pokemon because they're also monsters. And like, yes, you can make that argument if you want. It looks like Deathbattle does also believe that. And I understand because they have to make, the actual fight work. But then what if they're fighting a character who is very clearly not a monster? Like like you can't even argue that at all. So it's like, okay, so then what? Like, do you interpret the card meaning just all opposing forces, or would it literally not work because the character is not a monster in any sense of the word? Like, yes, there are definitely some universes where the wording or just the way the stuff works, it just doesn't work in terms of comparing it to other universes, and that's a little frustrating. But it's the way it happens sometimes.
Yeah, there's also like things like they didn't include Exodia in the fight, but like how do you power scale Exodia? Because like Exodia is you get all 5 pieces, you win automatically, no matter how strong the opponent is. Like, how do you power scale that?
And I think for some people, this is the reason why some people felt that this matchup was just kind of not worth doing, because if you do look at stuff like that, and even like, Yugi might not have anything quite of that level of bullshit, outside of Exodia, and again, they weren't really including Exodia, but, he does have other stuff, like, again, destroying all opposing monsters. Like, what the hell do you do against that? Like, and it's not even like, oh, destroys any monsters that have, like, this amount of health. It's literally just destroys them because it destroys them. Like, what do you do against that? So
it's like a little difficult to, like, how do you interpret that and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was really curious how they were going to handle it. And, they pretty much, it seems like they pretty much, like, made it so how it works in the game is how it works here. So.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think is the most fair. Like, it's the most respectful of, like, trying to get as much of an even playing field as possible. I think there are some people that may disagree and be like, oh, no, it should work like this, but really, like, what they're saying is it should work in the way that slightly favors my side, right? Whereas Deathbattle's trying to be, like, a neutral party, like, let's just make sure it works, the most fair to both sides. And the sad truth is that kind of just means that Yugi's side is more all-encompassing, more hard counters, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think that basically covers everything we wanted to say about Ash versus Yugi. I think we all very much enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that, everyone got basically what they wanted out of it. Obviously nitpicks for every episode, but that's always the way it goes. But now we can talk about other stuff, like coming up in the future. There's a few different things to talk about. Obviously, there are some episodes that we have coming up that are still left over from the Kickstarter. And then we also have maybe some teases at the end of Ash versus Yugi. So I think we'll start with Eric for this one. What do you think about what's coming up next in regards to anything that we kind of sort of know about?
So the ending for the next time preview, basically, the most definitive clue we have is we saw Ichigo from Bleach's Duels on Toho. Yep. So that means it seems like pretty much confirmed that Ichigo is returning to Deathbattle in the near future.
I would agree with that.
If not the very next episode. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. Ichigo is, again, one of my more favorite characters. And so I'm getting Dante to Yugi to Ichigo, potentially. So I'm having some of my favorite characters back to back.
Well, after all the bad luck you've had, I'm hoping that maybe you can be on a bit of a winning streak starting with Yugi. But we'll see. We don't know yet. We'll see what happens with Ichigo. I mean, we don't know if Ichigo is going to be the next one immediately. But yes, like I do very much agree. Yeah, it's going to be Ichigo versus someone in the near future in 2026. And yeah, as far as those teases go, like that's the one that everyone can agree on. Like unequivocally, we all know Ichigo is coming. There are other screens and stuff where like we can see things very vaguely or very briefly in the background. And I've seen so many, suggestions for what stuff could be. Like, I've seen, like, Infinite from Sonic the Hedgehog. I've seen, like, a Persona thing. I've seen, like, a Fantastic Four thing. I've seen, like, so many suggestions for, like, what all of this could be. And to me, like, this is very clearly not supposed to be something that we're supposed to know. Like, yes, the Ichigo one was kind of laid on a little thicker than the rest. But this isn't something we're supposed to be in agreement of going into it, right? So we'll see what happens. I'm just saying it's not supposed to be the same thing as like what we got like at the end of season 7 or the end of season 8, where like we're very clearly getting definitive teases for, the next few episodes. This is not that. So you can have your own ideas of what this stuff is supposed to be, but I wouldn't go in expecting anything necessarily, because it's very clearly not supposed to be definitive yet.
I'm really excited to see how they're planning to tackle Light versus Columbo. I mean, that's obviously not like a normal death battle type of thing. Mm-hmm. And Gru versus Megamind is one of the more like anticipated matchups. I don't feel any strong opinions towards Aang versus Traveler, but I feel like it could be interesting.
Yeah, Light versus Columbo is going to be some kind of bonus thing. I think there was even something they said on the Death Battle cast where it's like, it's not even a bonus episode, it's like its own thing. And I have no idea what the hell they mean by that, but either way, it's very clearly going to be like structured in its own way, which I think is way better personally than trying to make it like a rigid Death Battle episode, because I don't think that would do the comparison justice, like what they're trying to do. So yeah, I very much appreciate that. I'm way more excited for Gru versus Megamind than Aang versus Traveler, but I think pretty well everyone knows that already. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they wrap up the Kickstarter reveals.
Well, I'm definitely excited for, Ichigo.
Okay, great. Do you think you have any ideas for like what else could be teased for next, or like not really?
I don't honestly know. I now know what's possible because of what you just said from what you heard.
Well, even that is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, I might have an even better idea of like what some of this stuff could mean if I really like indulge myself in all of that and try to look at like what everyone is saying. But frankly, I don't really want to stress myself out with all of that, because there's still so much hidden from all of that. Like, we don't know. And I feel like trying to do a deep dive into that is just not going to be good for my mental health. So I'm going to wait a little bit, and I just know Ichigo's the one I know for sure. And we'll see what happens later. That's fine with me.
And the other episodes confirmed. I'm definitely excited for Aang versus the Traveler.
Okay.
Yes, I've seen the last Avatar. And I'm playing Genshin Impact. Okay. Yes, surprisingly. I'm excited for that one. And then for Light versus Columbo, whenever that one is. Yeah, I came to accept it. I know I'm
not the biggest fan of it, I guess.
No, I was always a fan of Light versus Walter. But, I came to accept it as it is.
Okay, well, that's very big of you. I'm very happy for you.
And then lastly, Gru versus Megamind. Yes.
We do know that like the only real confirm is Ichigo, and I don't really have a lot of thoughts on him or who he fights. I'm not really into Bleach, and like, I guess it'll just be cool to see like what they do. In the end, I think there's been speculation as to one of them being like something from directly from Genshin, which would suggest Aang versus Traveler. And personally, I do think like one of the very first teasers had like it was like dark blue mm-hmm. and dark and light blue. Like, I think personally that's the ocean monster from Avatar.
Oh,
so
okay.
I feel like it does. I think that is. I don't know what else could be, but it does match pretty closely. Well, it could be something different.
That's the one that I think a lot of people have like the most varying opinions on. Like, it's the one where you could argue we can technically see it the clearest. So I think that one especially has a lot of different theories. But again, we have no clue yet.
So like, yeah, I'm quite excited for Aang versus Traveler. Like, I think more than most people, because I desperately want like a good Avatar episode on the show. And like, I want to see how they cover Aang, and I don't mind this matchup with Aang versus the Traveler. So I'm curious how they cover that. Gru versus Megamind is I'm not too invested, but like it's like a good vibes matchup. I'll be looking forward to see it.
Cool.
Light versus Columbo is probably like, I don't know if it's like my next most anticipated matchup that I want to see, because like, yeah, I'm just so intrigued of like how they're going to do it. Like, it's its own thing. I'm curious how if there's gonna be much of a debate going on, and like overall, I just want to see like what their take is on it.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. One matchup we haven't really talked about is the one from the Champions Island, Kamen Rider Geats.
Oh yeah, how did we forget about that? Kamen Rider Geats versus
Nero Claudius.
Saber Nero Claudius. Yeah.
I don't really have much thoughts on that other than like, I mean, I guess it's cool. It's probably like the nichest matchup that'll probably be on the show, because in general, I don't think there's like I don't think there's like that big of like an audience in terms of like the general watchers of Deathbattle would be aware of in terms of like these characters. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they cover it. I'll be interested to learn more about their series.
The main thing is that they're two of the biggest or most anticipated series that people have wanted on Deathbattle for a while, and it just hasn't happened yet. And I think usually Deathbattle would try to pair one of those series with like a much bigger series. Like Captain America versus Kamen Rider Ichigo, I think, is a great example because it pairs Kamen Rider with Marvel, right? Like, who doesn't know Marvel? I think normally they would be trying to do stuff more akin to that because, again, these series are relatively more niche to like the wider audience, but they don't really have the opportunity to do that here because it's nicher series paired with nicher series, which again I think is very cool that that's what came out of Champions Island. But I don't think this is the kind of thing Deathbattle would have chosen to do on their own. Not saying that's a bad thing, it's just that that's kind of what we're getting out of this. We're getting something very different. But I am very excited to see how they analyze these things. Okay, well, that was a great talk. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. I very much appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's listening for listening. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment your comments down below on anything that we've talked about in here, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. But no matter what, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's it from us. That is a wrap. Good night, everybody.